Madison Pike had learned a long time ago that silence was its own kind of shield. She wore it like armor every day as she walked the halls of Bridgeway High, her sneakers making soft contact with scuffed linoleum floors that echoed louder than her voice ever had. She didn't speak unless spoken to. She kept her head down, hoodie up, earbuds in. Invisibility, she found, was the closest thing to safety. Bridgeway wasn't a school for the faint-hearted. It had its social classes. Jocks at the top, cheerleaders right behind, and a scattering of theater kids, gamers, and the invisible few who didn't fit anywhere. Madison didn't try to. She had transferred only 3 months ago after her mom's latest relocation. The kind of chaos that came with being a combat medic turned trauma nurse. They moved from base to base, town to town. This one felt no different. The bullies at Bridgeway came with polished veneers and rotten cores. Ethan Kessler led the pack, captain of the wrestling team, son of the town sheriff, smug, mean, and always looking for someone to dominate. His entourage was made up of Trent, Bryce, and Lucas, all cut from the same threadbare cloth of entitlement and testosterone. From day one, Madison drew Ethan's eye, not because she sought attention, but because she refused to give him any. That silence, that refusal to acknowledge his presence, it bothered him. He could own the whole hallway with a look, a smirk, a punch thrown behind the gym, but not her. And that made her dangerous to his ego. It started with words. "Hey, mute girl, you lose your tongue?" Then it became flicks at her notebook, spilled drinks by accident, whispers of, "Where you from? The jungle." Madison endured, not because she was weak, but because she was calculating. Every insult, every nudge, every petty humiliation, she filed them away. But Friday was different. Rain fell in slanted sheets across the football field. Inside the school, the lunchroom buzzed with bodies and noise. Madison, as usual, slipped out early and headed to the far-end girls' bathroom near the art wing. Quiet, empty. Hers. She didn't know she was being followed. Ethan and his boys had a plan. Trent had his phone out, already recording. They thought it would go viral. Shy girl gets schooled. They didn't know what they were walking into. The door slammed behind her. Lock, click. She turned. 4 boys, Ethan shirtless, like he was auditioning for a prison movie, smirking. "Hey Pike," he said, "you and me bathroom date. Didn't think you'd be into public stuff." She didn't answer. Trent laughed behind him. "Yo, we live, bro. Say hi to your fans, girl." "Why so quiet?" Ethan asked, stepping closer. "Say something, or do you only grunt in jungle language?" He shoved her, not hard, just enough. Madison hit the wall, cold tiles. She blinked once. Ethan reached for her arm. Bad move. The silence inside her snapped like a string pulled too tight. In less than 2 seconds, she had his wrist twisted behind his back. His knees hit the floor with a dull smack. He screamed. Bryce stepped forward. She turned, pivoted, elbow to the ribs. He gasped, crumpled. Lucas hesitated, made the mistake of charging anyway. Madison ducked, swept his legs. His head hit the stall door. Trent backed into the wall, phone trembling in his hand. She walked over, snatched it from him. "You want a video? Here's your ending," she said. Then she dropped the phone in the sink, turned on the water, and watched it drown. Ethan whimpered. She crouched beside him. "I don't need to speak to be heard," she whispered. By the time the teachers arrived, summoned by an emergency call from a custodian who heard the commotion, the bathroom looked like a war zone. Madison stood there, hoodie damp from sweat, fists still clenched. The others groaned on the floor. The camera on Trent's phone, retrieved from the sink, still worked. It had caught every second, and Madison Pike was no longer invisible. The video spread like wildfire. By morning, it wasn't just the students at Franklin High whispering. It was parents, teachers, local shop owners. Even the postman paused to stare a little longer at Avery Reynolds when she walked to the mailbox. The clip wasn't long, just under 40 seconds. But in that brief window, it showed everything. The confrontation, the slurs, the sudden precise reaction, the blood, and Avery standing still afterward like she hadn't just dismantled 3 students with nothing but instinct and training. But that wasn't the part that made it viral. It was her eyes, cold, unflinching, calculated. A girl who'd been pushed to her edge and didn't break. She executed. The principal, Mr. Halpin, had seen the video 10 times before the school bell rang, and by 3rd period, the superintendent had called an emergency meeting. They weren't dealing with a bullying situation anymore. They were dealing with national attention, mounting community pressure, and a sheriff demanding to know why. His son had a busted knee and a bruised ego. That sheriff, Douglas Vickers, the same man who'd once bragged during parent-teacher night about how his son was built to dominate. The same man who'd told his buddies over beers that the world needed less sensitivity and more old-school backbone. He stormed into the principal's office, red-faced and boiling. "You're telling me you're letting that girl walk around here after what she did to my son?" Mr. Halpin tried to stay neutral, tried to remember his training, tried not to notice the spit flying from the sheriff's mouth as he slammed his badge on the desk like it was a weapon. "We've reviewed the footage, Sheriff Vickers," Halpin said carefully, "and everything indicates your son and his friends cornered her, harassed her. She acted in defense. She broke his leg. She didn't start it. He's in the hospital, and she's what? Back in class like nothing happened?" "Sheriff," another voice said calmly. All heads turned as Staff Sergeant Maria Reynolds entered the room. Avery's mother. Her uniform was crisp, boots polished, her hair tied into a perfect military bun. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't slam anything. She didn't need to. The room shifted just by her presence. "You want to talk about broken?" she said, locking eyes with the sheriff. "Let's talk about what happens when 4 teenage boys corner one girl and plan to humiliate her. Let's talk about what happens when adults ignore warning signs until it's too late." "She ambushed them," Vickers spat. "She survived." "Them," Maria corrected. Halpin stood, sweat beginning to bead on his brow. "This isn't going to be resolved in my office," he said quickly. "We'll handle it through formal review. But we won't discipline a student for defending herself in a documented assault." The sheriff growled something under his breath, grabbed his badge, and left. Maria didn't move until the door clicked shut. Then she looked at Halpin and said, "You'd better get ready. This isn't over. Not for Avery, not for anyone." And she was right. By lunch, news vans were parked outside the school. By the time the emergency school assembly was announced, half the town had already taken sides. Some called Avery a hero. Others called her dangerous. The school board was under fire from both directions, praised for not punishing her, attacked for not expelling her. The auditorium was packed. Students filled the bleachers, teachers lined the walls, and cameras from the local news pointed toward the stage. Principal Halpin stood at the podium, his hands trembling slightly, the lights too hot, his collar too tight. "We're here," he began, "because something happened in our school, and it exposed more than just a fight. It exposed who we are, who we protect, who we ignore, and who we blame." Then he stepped aside, and Avery walked out. She wasn't wearing her hoodie. Not today. Her curls were tied back in a bun, and she wore a plain gray t-shirt with a small patch on the sleeve, an old Army cadet logo her mum had given her. She didn't step up to the mic immediately. She scanned the crowd first, faces of people who once looked through her now couldn't look away. "I didn't ask for this," she said, voice low but strong. "I didn't come here to be a headline. I came here to learn like everyone else." A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. I kept to myself because I thought that was safer. I ignored the names, the shoves, the jokes. I thought if I just stayed quiet, they'd stop. She paused. They didn't. Silence. I didn't fight because I was angry. I fought because I was cornered, because I was outnumbered. Because I was raised by someone who taught me that silence doesn't mean surrender. She looked up, right at the center row. And if that makes me dangerous, then maybe the danger was never me. For a second, the entire room held its breath. Then, someone clapped, then another, and then the room erupted. It didn't fix everything. Knox's family still threatened to sue. Vickers still barked into microphones about justice, but the narrative had shifted. The video, the silence, the truth. It had spoken louder than anyone expected. Knox transferred to a private school an hour away. Trent and Cash came back weeks later, quieter, humbler, never able to meet Avery's gaze. Bo dropped out entirely, but Avery, she became something else. Not popular, not feared, respected. She launched a self-defense club. Not just for girls, but for anyone who had ever felt cornered. She didn't talk much, but when she did, people listened. She became a voice for the invisible kids, a shield for the silent ones, a name people didn't whisper anymore. They said it proudly, Avery Reynolds, the quiet girl who showed everyone what strength really looked like. On graduation day, she walked across the stage to thunderous applause. Halpin handed her the diploma and leaned in to whisper, "You changed this place." Avery didn't smile. She just nodded once and walked off stage, eyes forward, steps steady, and when a reporter chased her down afterward, breathless with a camera in her face, asking, "Do you have anything to say to those who doubted you?" She turned to the lens, her eyes calm as ever. "Yeah," she said. "Next time you corner the quiet kid, make sure she's not trained to end it in 10 seconds. Then she walked away, not in fear, in freedom.